Hi friends, last week we planted some pumpkin seeds and we talked about how the life cycle, you'll see it all the way to a flower, but we won't be able to see it turn into a pumpkin because we don't have any bugs in our classroom to pollinate the flower. Okay, this book explains what pollinators are and how they allow plants to make seeds. So this story is called What Lily Gets from a Bee and Other Pollinator Facts. An important visitor. It is a sunny summer morning. Pink, yellow, and orange lily flowers are growing in the garden. Summer is the time of year when lilies make seeds, but they need help. Luckily, a small helper arrives. A honeybee lands on one of the lily flowers and crawls inside. A sweet treat for honeybee. Inside the lily, the bee drinks nectar. It is a sweet liquid that flowers make. Lilies also make a colored dust called pollen. Pollen comes from a part of the flower called the anthers. So here's the anthers. There are these long parts in the middle of the flower. And if you can look very closely, there's yellow dust on the bee, and that's called pollen. As the bee looks for nectar inside the flower, some pollen sticks to its furry body. When the bee is finished drinking, it flies to a different flower and crawls inside. Pollen is still stuck to its body. As the bee looks for more nectar, some pollen brushes off its body. It sticks to a part of the lily called the stigma. Here's the stigma right here. The little bee doesn't know it, but it has just helped the lily make a seed. So remember, we talked about it needs to have pollen from a different flower, and flowers just can't get up and walk and shake pollen into the other flower. They need these pollinators to do that for them, right? Honeybees help flowers. Spreading pollen from the anthers of one flower to the stigma of another is called pollination. Can you say that? Pollination. Honeybees are great pollinators. When they visit a flower to drink nectar, pollen sticks to their bodies. Then they spread the pollen as they fly from flower to flower to get more nectar. A honeybee may visit about 2,000 flowers in one day. That's crazy. Can you see all the pollen, little yellow dots stuck to the honeybee? I'll show you a cool video after this. Making seeds. Inside the lily, some of the pollen left behind by the bee begins the process of making seeds. The seeds grow inside a case that protects them. This case is called a seed pod. By fall, the seeds are fully grown, the lily flower dies, and the seed pod splits open. The seeds fall to the ground, ready to grow into a new lily plant in the spring. That's the life cycle, right? So here's an example of a lily seed pod. So this outer case is called the seed pod, and inside are the seeds being protected. And that is what the sprout of a lily plant looks like. Insect pollinators. Bees do more than just help lilies make seeds. They also pollinate apple blossoms, roses, daisies, and many other types of flowers. But bees aren't the only insect that can pollinate. Butterflies, moths, and beetles and other insects also do this important job. They move from flower to flower, drinking nectar and spreading pollen. Hummingbird pollinators. Oh, have you ever seen a hummingbird? I love hummingbirds. Insects aren't the only kind of animal that can pollinate flowers. Tiny ruby-throated hummingbirds visit flowers to lap up nectar with its long tongue. While feeding, the bird hovers in the air by flapping its wings about 50 times in 1 second. Pollen from the flower's anthers stick to the bird's wings. The bird then spreads the pollen to the other flowers it visits. Bats can pollinate too. Cool. Some types of bats visit flowers to eat pollen and drink nectar. These small animals pick up pollen on their fur and spread it as they fly from flower to flower. The bats visit plants that produce fruits such as mangoes, figs, and peaches. Yum. After the bats pollinate the flowers, the plants grow their seeds inside the fruits. It looks like there's a gecko, and he can also be a pollinator, a little lizard. And then do you see the bat? Okay, it's teamwork. When the bees or other pollinators visit flowers, 2 very important things happen. First, the animal gets the food that they need, the nectar, right? Second, the flowers are pollinated by the animals, and so then they can reproduce and make seeds. When honeybees and lilies come together, they make a great team. So this shows the bee going to the lily. He gets pollen on his body. He flies to another lily, and it touches the stigma, and that allows it to start making seeds. And then it has its seed pod, and it splits open, and the seeds fall to the ground. And then last, a new lily plant sprouts. That's the life cycle. Pretty neat, huh?